Abandoned ship. Abandoned ship. Abandoned ship. Abandoned ship. Abandoned ship.
Hopefully it's given something for audiences to think about their relationship with the river and water in general.
Double Pendulum kind of looks at, the politics of how breathing is affected by pollution. It looks at the different lung capacities of male and female. It looks at how race impacts on how we breathe, and also, how where we live geographically kind of impacts on how we breathe.
So if you're some sort of bug or a mosquito, these are the sounds you really don't want to hear, because it means you're going to be dead very, very soon. So I'm just going to play them very briefly, and then we can go on with the evening.
On the walk, you will be able to listen to the bats flying about, finding food through the detector. The signal from the bats will be fed into like a smartphone, so you'll be able to hear and see the calls at the same time.
I was intrigued to have a conversation with Professor Frank Kelly and the potential to respond to some of the underlying ideas and phenomena, and how his research gave a very particular sense of the body.
I hope the image of the shifting rhythms of the breathing, sometimes regular, sometimes faulty, sometimes laboured, can create a consciousness about the act of breathing.
We've provided her with a lot of video footage from our work in the deep ocean. We've talked at length about our work, which is a kind of cross between science and exploration, because we often go to places where other humans have not been previously.
So I hope that people might walk away with a kind of odd sense of everything being kind of, even if it's very subtle, sort of saturated with that kind of human impact.
It's being broadcast on Basic FM at the point where the run is finishing. So it's very directly aimed at people who have completed the race, either as runners or as spectators, and are kind of going home and have finished.
The water's been rising so fast.
That if somehow, in a kind of half-asleep state, you can put people in a kind of half-asleep state, portray this sort of notion of a flooded Newcastle, perhaps somehow that will enter the subconscious enough to trigger a kind of behavioural change in the sort of normal, daily reality.
Okay. So counting down from 10. 10. 9. 8.
We demand truth and we demand facts, but frankly, when we get them, we tend to hide away from them. So what do? I think we do respond to stories, to human emotions. We respond to art, we respond to poetry, and we're moved by these things, and that's the whole point. But we're not moved by science.
It's an upbeat message that if we are honest about where we are, and we're probably getting to the point where we're on the cusp of almost leaving it too late, then we still have some opportunities to make some changes that could deliver a climate resilient and livable future.
Now to our hamstring curl. That's it. You've got it. The most important thing is to keep the system going. That's it. Keep it moving now. Keep consuming all the time. That's what it's all about.
This September in Bristol, community members who live, work or find community somehow within a flood risk area of the city joined together to take a sports pitch marker around the edge of the flood risk zone and over a 2-week period demarcate an extensive area of the city using this chalk marker to create a long chalk line.
Working with the Invisible Dust in Rethink environment was really beneficial to the display because they add another layer of interpretation to the content that we are talking about. Often there's the voice of the museum, there's the curators, we have our beautiful objects, we interpret them, we ask our visitors to interpret them, but having this another perspective from contemporary artists to talk about our objects adds an opening, and I'd say it creates another kind of accessible means for people to really think about work that's produced and the history of our objects.
There is a widespread socially constructed silence around climate change such that the majority of people hardly ever talk about climate change from one year to the next. And for many people, we know certainly from opinion polls, a third of people can't recall ever having a conversation with anyone about climate change. So we have a huge crisis which is regarded as being outside the bounds of what it's acceptable to think or talk about.
One of the problems is that we're encouraged by our current culture to push the problem right out of mind and out of sight, the problem of the damage that our way of living is causing. And what Chodzko does is he brings that back in a visual way. He does it in a way that not only shows the physical damage to our world, but he also shows the way that our way of thinking fractures our minds.
It doesn't matter when people don't understand climate change. It doesn't matter that it's a difficult problem ultimately, because if we decide to act on it, we can put in place policies and measures that overcome all those known cognitive problems. So my message is one, on the one hand, of concern about how people get emotional about solving the problem, but at the same time, I'm utterly convinced that that is temporary and not, in principle, unsurmountable, and that we can indeed solve the problem.